Hello everybody and welcome to Rishi Outpost. Today I'm excited to finally give my review of The Mandalorian Season 2. Overall, I really loved this season, and I thought it was a good step up from Season 1. I thoroughly enjoyed the way this season of the show introduced new elements and reintroduced familiar elements and blended them all together in perfect Star Wars fashion. For the most part, I'm going to go episode by episode in this review to make sure I don't skip anything. But first, I just want to say the show is executed spectacularly. It is visually fantastic, the score is wonderful, the actors mostly do a really great job, and I just wanted to say this at the beginning because this applies to every episode, so I don't need to say it when talking about each episode. But now, without further delay, let's dive into the episodes. The season premiere, titled The Marshal, was an absolutely perfect episode of Star Wars television. We get a nice reintroduction to the series with Mando being the fiercely determined and dangerous fighter that we know him to be. He fights his way out of a trap and still gets the information he wants about where to find another Mandalorian. Except when he finds the man who he was told about, he's not a Mandalorian at all, but a sheriff named Cobb Vanth, who has Boba Fett's armor. Vanth's inclusion in the show was one of my favorite parts of the episode, and actually this season as a whole. For those who don't know, Vanth was a character who appeared briefly in each book of the Aftermath trilogy of novels, a canon series that takes place less than a year after the Battle of Endor. In those books, we see him buying the armor and becoming Sheriff of Mos Pelgo. His inclusion in The Mandalorians means so much for how connected all of the different media are at Lucasfilm, and it is really exciting to think that they might actually be on track to not only have the books and comics playing off of the movies and TV shows, but also have the shows and movies playing off of the books. Not to mention, Vanth is a really cool character in the show, and he pushes Mando forward in a way that makes sense for his character. Din almost kills Vanth over the armor, showing us how important it is to Din's code and how important the armor was for Vanth to free Mos Pelgo from the oppression of the Mining Guild. But when a Krayt Dragon shows up, causing trouble for the town, the two agree that if Din helps them get rid of the beast, Vanth will give him the armor. With the help from the Tusken Raiders and with an epic struggle, they do just that. I really liked how Cobb Vanth and the villagers had to work with the Tusken Raiders to put aside their differences for the sake of the common good. I think it's a message that's timeless and incredibly important. The second episode of the season, Passenger, was probably the weakest of the bunch in my opinion, but it was still fun. We see Mando take on a passenger and they get stranded after an encounter with New Republic X-Wings. They get chased by a bunch of spiders in a scene that reminded me of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, and then they get saved by the New Republic pilots at the end. There was also a weird dynamic where the child was eating the Frog Lady passenger's eggs, which was played as a joke, but I'm not really sure that meshed well with the audience being sympathetic to the Frog Lady, which was also seemingly intended. I really liked the ending, however, when the New Republic pilots let Mando go because he had tried to save the New Republic person in Season 1 on the prison ship and had trapped all those bounty hunters who betrayed him. I thought that was a neat and clever connection. In the third episode, The Heiress, we get to see the heartwarming reunion between the Frog Lady and her husband, which was probably one of the most wholesome Star Wars scenes ever. Then we see Mando get tricked onto a watercraft by pirates who try to kill him for his armor. The pirates get the jump on him, but he's saved by none other than Bo-Katan and several other Mandalorians. I love Bo-Katan's introduction to the show, and I think the character transitioned from animation to live action really well. I love how she and her companions challenge Din Djarin's view on what it means to be a Mandalorian. It's confirmed in this episode that Din is a part of a splinter group of Mandalorians with radical views on what they should be. Despite their differences, Bo-Katan helps Mando again when more pirates try to kill him when he returns to shore. Then they work together to take an Imperial cruiser for Bo-Katan in exchange for her telling Din where he can find a Jedi. Although the cruiser has better defenses than Bo hinted at, shockingly, the four Mandalorians were able to win the day, and Din sets off to find Ahsoka Tano. I love how much they gave us in this episode, bringing Bo-Katan to live action, watching Mandalorians tear through an Imperial cruiser, and getting Ahsoka name dropped was all really fantastic. The fourth episode, The Siege, took another bit of a pause from the main story with Din returning to Navarro for repairs to his ship. He goes on a mission with Cara Dune, Greef Karga, and the bounty who Din brought in during the very first episode of the show. Together, they destroy the last Imperial outpost on Navarro, but discover a clue about what Dr. Pershing and Moff Gideon were trying to do with the child. In a recording, Pershing mentions an M count, which is undoubtedly a midichlorian count. We also see some mysterious-looking figures in a vat. It looks like this could be research that is connected to Palpatine and Snoke, or it could also be Gideon trying to do something on his own. It's possible that he wants to become some kind of Sith Lord. He wields the Darksaber, and maybe he's trying to do some kind of blood transfusion to make himself Force sensitive. Despite being a break from the main story of the show, I thought this episode was fun and it gave us a lot to theorize about. The 5th episode of the season, The Jedi, finally gave us what we'd been waiting for the whole season up to this point. We get to see Ahsoka in live action. I absolutely loved this episode. I wish we had had more context about the people who were ruling over the village, but I have a feeling this was very much a backdoor pilot for the Ahsoka series that was announced shortly after this episode dropped. But I really like Rosario Dawson's portrayal of Ahsoka, and seeing her in live action was really cool for me since I grew up with the Clone Wars, and Ahsoka was my first lens into the Star Wars universe. We also get a name reveal for the child, Grogu. I like that Ahsoka is able to talk to Grogu through the Force. Since he's 50 years old, it makes sense that he would be able to communicate in some capacity. And since we know that Yoda talks verbally in a highly unusual way, while also being incredibly adept in the Force, it makes a lot of sense that perhaps his species learns to communicate through the Force before they learn to speak Basic. I also really enjoyed how Ahsoka didn't want to train Grogu because of his attachment to Din. Ahsoka, knowing what happened to Anakin, makes this very believable. I'm also guessing that Ahsoka has other things on her mind than devoting almost all of her time to training someone in the Force. But she does give Din and Grogu another chance by telling them to go to Tython. I loved that the show brought in this planet, which was significant in the Legends continuity for being the birthplace of the Jedi Order. While it looks like it's not quite that big in the new canon, it is still an ancient Jedi site. The 6th episode, The Tragedy, takes us straight to Tython, where Din takes Grogu to the Seeing Stone as he was instructed to do by Ahsoka. Grogu goes into a deep meditation state, and none other than Boba Fett shows up looking for his armor that Din got from Cobb Vanth in the 1st episode of the season. We find out that Fennec Shand is with Boba, and that he was indeed the person at the end of the 5th episode in Season 1. Shand is alive and well, with a robotic stomach and all. Din has a tense standoff with the both of them, but they talk things out, and Boba explains that Jango was indeed a Mandalorian foundling, which settles a fandom controversy that's been brewing for years. Then the Empire arrives because they were tracking Din's ship and have caught up to him. Din, Boba, and Fennec fight off waves of stormtroopers in one of the best action pieces of the show so far. Boba even donning his old armor and jetpack. But in the end, Moff Gideon's Dark Troopers are able to fly down and grab Grogu while the others are too far away to stop them. Boba, having pledged to rescue him in order to fulfill his promise to Din, shows an honorable side to Fett that we haven't seen before. I'm hoping that this continues into the future, wherever Boba pops up after this point in the timeline. I loved how the Seeing Stone was used in this episode, and the introduction of Boba Fett into the story was done really well. In the 7th episode, The Believer, we see Din, Boba, and Fennec scheming to try to rescue Grogu. They recruit New Republic Ranger Cara Dune and the criminal gun-for-hire Miggs Mayfield to break into an Imperial facility in order to discover Grogu's location. Mayfield tells them the location of an Imperial outpost they can hit in order to find Moff Gideon and Grogu. To sneak into the actual base, Mando has to put on the outfit of an Imperial instead of his armor in order to get in undetected. Then he and Mayfield have to defend an Imperial ground transport carrying explosive Rhydonium to the base. They fend off pirates and are nearly overwhelmed, but they arrive at the base and are saved by a legion of stormtroopers. I thought this was a brief but impactful look at how some of the galaxy could view the Empire as heroic, as the troops fight off the pirates and basically save the day. Once they're inside, Mayfield says he can't take his helmet off to complete the eye scan necessary to obtain the information because officers that he used to serve under were sitting in the area. Din then takes the major step of taking off his helmet in front of others for the first time since he was a child in order to do the eye scan so he can rescue Grogu. This shows us just how much he's come to love Grogu and that he will go to any length to rescue him. After he gets the information, he and Mayfield are cornered by an officer who wants to have a drink with them since they had heroically protected the transport earlier. They get to talking about Operation Cinder, where the Empire destroyed itself on Palpatine's orders after his death. Mayfield gets uncontrollably angry with the officer as he talks so casually about the death and destruction caused by Cinder, and shoots him where he sits. Then Mayfield and Din have to make a quick escape from the outpost and are picked up by Boba in the Slave One. As the Slave One flies away, Boba uses one of its seismic charges to blow up pursuing ties. I loved seeing the seismic charge again. Its unique look and sound combined with its destructive power have always fascinated me since I was a kid. At the end of the episode, the heroes decide to let Mayfield go because he acted heroically. Then we see Moff Gideon receives a message from Din where he tells him that he's coming for Grogu in a mirror of the speech that Gideon gives to Din in the second to last episode of Season 1. This was a perfect ending to this episode and a great setup for the finale. And a great finale it was, with Episode 8, The Rescue. The crew assembled in the last episode minus Mayfield finds Bo-Katan and asks her for her help to rescue Grogu. She agrees because she wants to take down Gideon. With the help of the now captured Dr. Pershing, they break into Moff Gideon's ship. Boba pilots the Slave One while the others sneak onto the cruiser. Mando gets to the Dark Trooper droids just in time to jettison them into space, only having to fight one himself. Meanwhile, the others take the bridge of the ship, but Gideon is not there. Instead of being on the bridge, Gideon is in the brig with Grogu. He tries to trick Mando, but Din ultimately defeats Gideon in their bout. When he brings the defeated Moff to the bridge, Bo-Katan gets angry because Din is now the rightful owner of the Darksaber and has a claim to be the leader of all Mandalorians. Before they can address this, the Dark Troopers return and the heroes seal off the bridge. Based on how hard it was for Mando to destroy just one, it looks bleak for everyone that they're about to face 20. But before the Dark Troopers can break onto the bridge, a lone X-Wing arrives, and from it emerges a cloaked figure wielding a green lightsaber. The figure slices through the Dark Troopers, and Luke Skywalker reveals himself to our heroes. This was an amazing intro for Luke. It makes me think about how Mark Hamill wanted to be the one to pop out and save Rey and Finn in The Force Awakens, and it makes me happy to see that that's exactly what Luke gets to do here. I love how Luke is portrayed in the episode. I think it lines up perfectly with where he's at during the end of Return of the Jedi and the other stories that he's been in that take place shortly after Return of the Jedi. Once he reveals himself and tells Din he's ready to help Grogu, the season ends as Grogu goes off with Luke and R2-D2 to learn how to use the Force. I thought this was the perfect ending to this season. I suspected throughout the last year or so that Grogu would leave the show, and it looks like that's what's happening. I'm sure we'll see him now and again, but now the show can focus on Din Djarin's interactions with the other Mandalorians. My guess is next season will be about him and Bo-Katan trying to find a way to work together to unite the Mandalorians to reclaim their homeworld. Overall, I really loved Season 2 of The Mandalorian. I'm sad we have to wait over a year for Season 3, but I think we will have plenty of awesome Star Wars stuff coming out before that to look forward to. Well, that's all I have for you guys this time. Be sure to leave a like and tell us what you thought of The Mandalorian Season 2 in the comments below. As always, thank you for watching, and may the Force be with you.